How many crabs does it take to win a game of Duskmourn Standard on a budget? That's what we're going to find out today. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic, and we have a super sweet one this week. We are heading to Duskmourn Standard to play some Simic Crab Spellslinger, and this deck is just so much fun to play, and it's actually super strong too, and the best part is, very cheap to put together. In paper, right around $100 on Magic Arena. Technically 22 total rares, although a little bit deceptive because 12 of those are the mana base. So if you don't count the lands, it's down to 10. 4 of those are in the sideboard, so if you're playing best of 1, you're down to 6. So it's actually a little bit cheaper to put together than the 22 rare price tag would suggest. But anyway, let's talk about this deck. What makes it so incredibly sweet? Jump into some games, see it in action. So we are built around our only 2 real creatures in our deck. Our crabs, even though one is technically a serpent and Tolarian Terror, Eddymart Crab and Tolarian Terror. So these are 7 drops, but they cost 1 less to cast for each instant or sorcery at our graveyard. So we can get Crab down to 2 mana, Terror down to 1 mana, and they each have different upsides. Eddymart Crab has Flash and it taps down 2 creatures when it comes into play. Tolarian Terror can get down to 1 mana since it only has 1 blue pip and it has Ward 2. But the main goal of our deck is to fill our graveyard with spells super quick and then chain together these massive 5/5s for 1 or 2 mana and use them to win the game. But actually, we're an Up the Beanstalk deck. Up the Beanstalk draws us a card whenever we cast something with mana value 5 or greater. It turns out that Eddymart Crab and Tolarian Terror technically cost 7 mana, but we're usually casting them for 1 mana or 2 mana pretty early in the game. So we can play an Up the Beanstalk, and then we just chain together these crabs. They're also drawing us a ton of cards to refill our hand, to find us more action, to find us more crabs, to push us further ahead, and then we close out the game. The other 2 super key cards in this deck are This Town Ain't Big Enough and Storm Chaser Stanley. So This Town Ain't Big Enough, I had never even really considered this being a constructed card before, but it is so incredibly cool in this deck. So it's a 5-mana instant, but it costs 3 less to cast if it targets one of our permanents, and then you bounce 2 non-land permanents. So for 5 mana, we can bounce 2 of our opponent's things, or for 2 mana, we can bounce 1 of our things, 1 of our opponent's things. So this does a few different things. So first, we can cast it for 2 mana, bouncing 1 of our own things and 1 of our opponent's things, and use it to trigger Up the Beanstalk, because it's technically 5 mana. More importantly, there's just a ton of sweet synergies with this card, where we can like cast an Eddymart Crab to tap down our opponent's 2 things, and then the next turn, bounce our own Eddymart Crab and 1 of our opponent's things, get the crab back, cast it again for 2 mana, tap down more things, kind of making this weird like fog line. Plus it works really well with Storm Chaser Stanley, which just makes a 1/1 blue and red otter when it enters with prowess. So we can like Storm Chaser Stanley to make the 1/1 and then bounce it back to our hand with This Town Ain't Big Enough and do it again. Storm Chaser Stanley, eventually we can level it up and get a spell back, or maybe even start making more otters with level 3, but really it's mostly for the 1/1 and synergizing with This Town Ain't Big Enough. So this is kind of the core of the deck. Otherwise, we got a bunch of ways to fill the graveyard. So we start filling the graveyard with our mana base. So we're only playing 18 real lands in the deck, but that's because we have 4 Bushwhacks and 1 Analyze the Pollen, which are just 1 mana spells that can get us a land. We can also maybe fight something with Bushwhack, or sometimes tutor up a crab with Analyze the Pollen. But essentially these are lands that cost a mana, but they put a spell in the graveyard, so we end up getting that mana back by reducing the cost on our Eddymart Crabs, on our Tolarian Terrors. Then we have just a bunch of spells. Sleight of Hand, Cheap Cantrip, Cetophobe, Cachet Grab, Cash Grab, I know, it's Cash Grab. Just fill the graveyard at lightning speed, into the Flood Maw for some bounce, also a cheap spell, and then 1 3 steps ahead, just as kind of a catch-all counter spell. In the sideboard, we have some more removal and Pick Your Poison, Filigree Like Soul Guide Lantern for graveyard decks, Obstinate Bailout for discard, and a bunch of counter spells. And that is Simic Crab Spellslinger for Standard. And that's our Budget Magic deck for this week. So let's jump into some games and see this amazing deck in action. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy it. And I'll be back in a bit for the wrap up. Need some magic cards? Well, you can snag them from our sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. Budget Magic time. We are playing some Simic Up the Beanstalk Crab Spellslinger in Standard. This deck is so cool, and this hand looks great. We have a crab, we got Up the Beanstalk. The only thing we're missing is ways to fill the graveyard. We need to get spells in the graveyard to reduce the cost of our terrors and our crabs. Opponent appears to be carrying Caustic Bronco. Ooh, into the Flood Maw is a good draw. Can bounce the Bronco, although I think we just Up the Beanstalk. Against black decks, I'm always worried about getting crabbed. I don't really want our Up the Beanstalk locked under a crab. That is, Up the Beanstalk's like our best engine piece in this deck. It makes it like almost a combo deck sometimes. Opponent finds a deadly cover-up, takes 5. All right. I mean, our deck deals damage in chunks of 5, so that's actually an entire attack off our clock. Cash Grab is about the best draw. Hopefully this gets some spells in our graveyard to get the cost down on our crabs. Yeah, let's take a crab, mill some spells, play the Sanctum, and I think we just pass and then bounce something with Into the Floodmaw. Analyze the Pollen is interesting. So we can just play it early to get a land and get a spell in our graveyard, although now we have a crab in the graveyard. Especially with our opponent having this deadly cover-up. We only have 2 threats in our deck, right? We have the Eddy Money Crabs and we have the Tolarian Terrors. If our opponent can deadly cover up away one of those, that could leave us a little light Sentinels for our opponent on ways to finish the game. So if they go to deadly cover-up, in exile, we can, hopefully before that, exile the crab from our graveyard with Analyze Pollen. Opponent going to crew. Well, let's bounce whichever one is not going to deal damage to our opponent. All right, bounce the Bronco. Opponent. Gonna go to combat. Show us another 5-drop. Spin it to an and 2. All right, Mosswood Red Knight down to 13. I mean, we can start crabbing this turn, which is probably our game plan. The question is, do we need to do anything else? They can't deadly cover up yet. We could like Analyze the Pollen, untap land. I guess we can Analyze the Pollen, tap land. Let's just Hedge Maze. We're gonna, ooh. This Town Ain't Big Enough for the both of us is probably my favorite card in this deck. It's so janky looking, but it's actually absurdly powerful and synergistic. Like bouncing one of each player's things, it's 5 mana, but technically it's 2 if we bounce our own thing, so it triggers up the Beanstalk. And then there's just so many sneaky synergies of like, play a crab, pick it back up, play it again to tap your stuff down. Speaking of crabs, let's do a little Eddy Money crabbing here. Tap down this Caustic Bronco and the Sentinel, and draw a card with Up the Beanstalk. Opponent. Mosswood Red Knight to draw a card. Worth pointing out, our opponent's at 12. That is all their own doing. We had no piece in any of this damage. Our opponent has done this all to themselves with Caustic Broncos and Dread Knights. And wow, draws again. Wow, that is so greedy. Double draws, so now we get to smack him down to 6? I kind of want to exile that crab from the graveyard. Let's Bushwhack first. We're not going to play the Terrors, right? Because the Terrors just get wrathed by this deadly cover-up. So let's Bushwhack away the Sentinel. And now we can Analyze the Pollen. Get rid of the crab. And I guess the Bushwhack. Getting rid of the crab, so we can find another crab here if we want to, or a Terror for next turn. Getting rid of this, the main upside is... Yeah, it's past the turn. The main upside is our opponent cannot exile all of them with their deadly cover-up down. Opponent. Wow, still attacking. Bronco into Innkeeper's Talent. Opponent down to 4. Well, things are looking good. Is it deadly cover-up time? Opponent. Deadly cover-up. Pick up our crab. Bounce the token. Lose nothing. No crabs in the graveyard for our opponent to... Oh. They weren't collecting evidence anyway. Okay, there was a simpler way to do that then. All right, unnecessarily sneaky there. We could have just let it resolve and flash in another crab. However, now we get to have a big turn. Tolarian Terror, draw a card. Tolarian Terror, draw a card. Crabs at the ready. Cash Grab at the ready. Pass the turn. Opponent cannot take a single hit from any of our creatures or they die. Even if they have another deadly cover-up, they still die because we can flash in a crab and there's no crab in the graveyard to exile. This Town Ain't Big Enough. So cool. Wow, they do have a second deadly cover-up. The bad news for our opponent is there is no Eddy Money Crab in the graveyard, so I think we got him. An opponent, what do we deal, 5 to them? So opponent, they more than halfway killed themselves here. We're gonna deal 9, our opponent's gonna deal 11. Oh, thank you, Caroline. Bum bum bum. Whenever I hear Caroline, I gotta do that. Let's run out a Eddy Money Crab, draw a card, and make you die. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's not a 1 mana instant speed black removal spell that kills this crab. We could just keep popping off with these Up the Beanstalks, but we will politely put our opponent to an end, and that went pretty well. Not bad, not bad, not bad. What do we want? Opponent's playing Golgari. Ways to deal with Innkeeper's Talent, probably necessary. This hand seems fine. We got the Up the Beanstalk. If there's one card we want to see in our opening hand, it's actually Up the Beanstalk. That is the most important one. Stormchaser's Talent. Stormchaser's Talent looks so weird in this deck, but it's actually like super sneaky good. Opponent. There's the bat. There goes our Up the Beanstalk. Thankfully, we have plenty of Into the Floodmaws to bounce the bats. If we only had one removal spell, you take the removal spell, but since we have two, I think you just take the Up the Beanstalk so we can't play it next turn and make us spend a mana to bounce the crab. Oh. Alright, they take the 3 steps ahead. That's fine. We weren't planning on casting that in the near future anyway, so we will get down our Up the Beanstalk, grow our little otter friend. Well, there's this town ain't big enough. This town ain't big enough also really good with Stormchaser's Talent. We can cast it, draw with Beanstalk, pick it up, replay it, trigger Prowess, make another... They actually could have went after the bounce spells, but we do kind of want this Analyze the Pollen just to get a land. Going to take one of the Into the Floodmaws. Grab a island, probably? I think in general with this deck, we want one source of green mana, and then blue, 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 blue. Like, we really... I guess sometimes we could use 2 after sideboarding, but in general, we really only need 1 green source for the Up the Beanstalks. Get in at ya. We will pass the turn. We're going to start bouncing bats at some point. Plus, we want to draw cards when they're Up the Beanstalk. Opponent going to grab a forest. I think we take it for now. If we do it now, they just recast the bat. So we got to wait till their end step. Plus, when do we get to see if they play anything else? But end step, we will bounce it. Ooh, Glissa. Okay, Glissa, we cannot get it hit by, or else it blows up right after the Beanstalk, which would be kind of sad. So I think we, this time ain't big enough. Pick up the Stormchaser's Talent. Bounce the Glissa. Draw a card. It's our friend the crab. Well, okay. Cash Grab can grab us a land, hopefully. Cash Grab. Prowess. Mill. Well, okay. Many lands. Yeah, I think we take the island. If we take the island, we can play the land. Go to, let's play the Stormchaser's Talent first to trigger Prowess. We can play Stormchaser's Talent. And then we can steal Into the Floodmaw. Well, hit ya. Down to 16. These otters are doing some work. We're actually, like, oddly good at triggering Prowess. Simic Spellslinger is not the normal color combination for Spellslinger, but it's kind of working. Opponent Innkeeper's Talent. Well, this is why I've been holding on to this Pick Your Poison. We have a good answer. Opponent. Ooh, those talents. Okay, that's kind of bad for us. Well, so much for the Pick Your Poison plan. So opponent, gonna start growing bats. Thankfully, they're not leveled up, so we can still bounce a bat. So let's bounce the one with the Into the Floodmaw. Get back Into the Floodmaw. Draw an Into the Floodmaw. Okay, yep. Well, pick your... It's a Into the Floodmaw kind of turn here. Pick Your Poison. Do we want to do this now? The bat's gonna come back down. We can bounce the bat to get back the counter and then counter the second bat. Like, the Innkeeper's Talents don't do much if there's not a creature. Yeah, let's cast one. Get rid of the Pick Your Poison. Or cast the Pick Your Poison. Get rid of one of the Innkeeper's Talents. The ward is also annoying because we want to use the crab to bounce down their stuff. Down to 14. And we'll just pass. We got our crab, we got our bounce. Opponent, Deep Cavern Bat. Opponent's going to be in for some bad news. That we once again have 2 Into the Floodmaws. But instead, we will just wait. Since we have 2 of them, we don't need to use it now. Get down the Eddie Money Crab, tap down. So opponent's not quite dead yet, but they're not that far off from being dead. They probably have to take Into the Floodmaw, right? I don't think there's another great option. Like, you can take the Tolarian Tear. Yeah, opponent has to take one. Kind of a disappointing bat for our opponent because we can just bounce it any... Ooh, do we bounce now? I guess we can wait. Now we have to pay the ward. But do we do it now before they put the counter on it? Do we even need to do it at all, though? Let's just wait. I don't even think we really need to do it yet, period. Their stuff's tapped down. So we can Into the Floodmaw bounce. Trigger. We just want our opponent to not gain life because we're so close to winning here. And then Tolarian Terror for 1 mana, draw a card. Ooh, slain a hand, eh? Let's just go attacking. Hit ya. I think we need to leave up the Into the Floodmaw. Leave up the Into the Floodmaw with ability to pay for ward. Opponent, gonna do some more batting. Well, now I think we bounce the non-summoning sick bat. Just to keep our opponent from gaining life with it, basically. They can take cards from our hand now. We don't really care about that. Bounce the bat. Going to take, doesn't really matter, probably the 3 steps ahead again. Sure. So they can play the bat, but then they still die, right? Especially since we can level up Storm Chaser's talent and just get back another Into the Floodmaw. So it's been the Into the Floodmaw game. Our opponent just can never get any traction. They have good cards, right? Bat's a great card. Innkeeper's Talon's a great card. Glissa's a good card. They have, wow. All right, Bona goes to combat. And, I mean, are they hoping removal? What is their plan for getting out of this? All right, gonna play the Glissa. Oh, I think that does it, right? Because we can just Storm Chaser's Talent. Storm Chaser's Talent bounce the Glissa since it doesn't have ward. Yeah, get back into the Flood. I mean, I guess we could also make them sack the bat if we wanted to, but either way I think works. Bounce the Glissa, trigger, go to combat, and our opponent, been crabbed. Sweet. Simic Crab Spellslinger in Standard, and this hand, it's fine. It's missing the Up the Beanstalk, but oh, here comes aggro. Okay, the true test. Can we beat the most aggressive deck in Standard? At least we're on the play. If this Cash Grab is nice, actually between Cash Grab and Seed. All right, there's a Monstrous Rage. I feel like there's a decent chance we can crab next turn. Bound at combat, and cannot do anything about this turn. All right, we will take our beats down to 15. Well, Cash Grab. We don't even really care about, well, hitting a land's fine. Oh, all right, we're gonna crab. That milling did not go as well as we had hoped. We really need to be able to cast this crab. Seeds of Hope. Mill some spells, please. I've never wanted to whiff more, thank goodness. Okay, we did it. Turn 3 crab achieved. And we have this town in hand, so we actually have triple crabs technically, right? We can crab to tap your stuff down, second crab to tap your stuff down, bounce the crab, replay the crab, tap your stuff down. I think with the crabs being online fast enough, this might actually let us survive the rush of mono reds, like show off or gruel technically. Yes, when you go to combat opponent. Do a little crabbing. Tap you, and tap you. Oh, all right. Opponent has a Snakeskin Veil, which is pretty good for them. That lets them get in for 5 this turn. So we drop to 12. Into the Floodmaw is a good draw. It's a very good draw. Hit ya, down to 15. Are we just faster than mono red? That can't be. There's no way. There's no way, but our opponent's at 15. Well, all right, instant replay. Opponent goes to combat. How about a Eddie Merc Crab to tap your stuff down again? We're kind of turbo fog, but our fogs are crabs. And they only fog 2 creatures. But you get a 5/5 out of it. Opponent tap land. Passing? Oh, God. And another Into the Floodmaw? Okay, this is looking very good. Opponent. Well, we'll just pass the turn. We got options. And nothing's big enough currently to kill us with the fling. I think we just let it go this time and just use our Into the Floodmaws. If they're not going to cast a spell, we will take 1 from the Slick Shot. All right, opponent going to start casting spells. Well, I mean, we can't let that happen. Actually, can we just take 6? Is that insane? I think it's fine. Because this sets us up to win, right? They replay the Heartfire hero. They need another, they're going to try to play 2 blockers. The risk there is if they had the fling, we were dead, but I don't think they had the fling. So now we should be good, right? Into Floodmaw, tap down a blocker, and even if they have a Snakeskin Veil or something, that should do it. Untap with the crabs, and do a little surveilling on the way out the door here, just to make sure. Mill the island. You gotta combat. Oh, opponent. I think you've been crabbed. Turn inside. Okay, sure. I thought maybe they had removal for the unblocked crab, but no, they're just They're just casting spells before they die. And, okay, our opponent did draw like 5 lands, which is kind of a lot for mono red, but we did kind of, sort of, actually just beat the most aggro deck in the format. Impressive. Maybe this deck's actually good. So we can bring in a little more removal. The Filigree Silex seems pretty good against, it's at its best against tokens, but it's also good against a deck that's just all 1-drops. I actually don't know if Obstinate Baloth is worth it or not. Gaining 4 sounds appealing. It's mostly in the deck for the discard matchup, though. That's the real goal, to get it for free against discard. On to game number 2. We're on the draw against Cruel, which is scary, scary times. So I will say, up the Beanstalk, we really want it in our opening hand. At the same time, I don't think we have to, like, mulligan until we find it or anything. Like, we can function perfectly fine without it. And even against this deck, it might be a bit slow. Well, let's Botanical Sanctum. And I think we just analyze to grab a island here. Are we going to be fast enough with Gruul on the play? Thankfully, there's no Leyline. If there was a Leyline, I'd be really scared. But no Leyline, a little less scary. Opponent slick shots us down to 18. Sleight of hand. Well, play the land. And how do we get the most spells in the graveyard? Probably just cash grab. Yeah, let's just pass. If we can get enough spells in the graveyard, we can get down to Tolarian Terror and use it to fight with the Bushwhack. Ooh, no spells? Oh boy, okay. Well, that's good news. Opponent has a not that scary Gruul hand. Mill, well, there is not many spells, but there isn't Up the Beanstalk. There's also Storm Chaser's Talent. I think, as good as Up the Beanstalk is, I think we win the long game against this deck. We just want anything we can do to not die fast. That was not a great mill for us, honestly. We were hoping to get more spells in the graveyard. Well, we can Storm Chaser's Talent. This at least turns on this town that we can use to pick it back up, mount something else if our opponent tries to pop off here. About it. Land. And, there's the ley line. All right, sure, opponent goes to combat. We might just bounce the ley line. That is the downside of ley lines, right? They are incredible on turn 0. Not great when you draw them like turn 2. Little bit worse. Let's just bounce the ley line. Bounce the ley line, pick up the talent, take the beats. Aw. I mean, I guess we can Bushwhack fight. Our opponent's tapped out, and the prowess will resolve first. We can also sleight of hand. We're going to do this anyway, so we have enough lands. Let's take the Seed of Hope. And then we can Bushwhack. Fight down the Slickshot Show-Off. You didn't hit ya. I mean, crabs are online. Eddie Money Crab is coming. And I think we might actually be beating Gruul. Opponent. Leyline is back. Opponent really needs a pump spell here. They need a pump spell. They need to get some damage in. This is about to get out of hand for them. Tap down the hero just to be safe. Opponent. All right, another hero. Only 1 card left in hand. Bushwhack is not a bad draw. I guess we can Seed of Hope. Seed of Hope does whiff quite a bit, but hey, Filigree Silex. Filigree Silex is kind of great next turn. Is great next turn good enough? Let's fight down the hero. It might be better just to try to kill our opponent. Imagine that. Our best plan might be to try to just win the game. But we can just add a bunch of power to the battlefield, right? We can add a bunch of power. Hit our opponent for 9? Well, mill the land and just set up, hopefully winning next turn. So our opponent's got a 14 us. They do have a ley line and a Heartfire here, but they got a 14 us through a 5/5 with, well, now 1 card in hand. I was going to say 2 cards in hand, but 1 card in hand. Looking at the tear and scoops it up, and 2 in a row. 2 in a row for the crabs. Even beat Gruul somehow. Thankfully not the scariest Gruul draw, but still. And this hand kind of sucks. Too many lands. This hand sucks a little bit less. We'll get rid of this town. Really going to come down to the Seed of... Yeah, I guess we can't get away from this towns. Really can't... really going to come down to the Seed of Hope. Ooh, Orzhov. All right, we might be in for a grind. Sleight of Hand's not bad. Let's Sleight of Hand. I mean, at this point... There's all 4. We put 1 to the bottom, drew 1, and then hit 2 more on the top of our deck. All right. We are just fated to... Oh, it's discard. Oh, boy. We're just fated to have it this town ain't big enough. We did mill some spells, though. Well, get rid of this town. All right. I mean, we get to slam a 5/5 and be like, can you beat it, Orzhov? And... Oh, Hopeless Nightmare. Okay. We will discard into the Flood Maw. Wow, we can slam 2 5/5s. Wait, is this a free win? Tolarian Terror. Pass the turn. Opponent needs answers. They need answers. It's a swamp. Oh. Liliana is a really clean answer here. That's bad. Well, let's run out the Eddie Money Crab. Take 2. We'd rather sack the Eddie Merc. Our opponent doesn't have creatures anyway. Tolarian Terror at least has the ward. Ugh, a land. Well, can we go face? I probably have to kill Lily. The problem is if we don't attack Lily here, they can play a chump blocker for next turn, take up Lily, and then take down, and they would have killed both of our big finishers with 1 Liliana. Spring-loaded saw blades. Sure. All right. Well, tear her down. Yeah, this is not looking great. Not looking great. We are out of cards. We got really no way to refuel. That's the thing, right? That's why Up the Beanstalk is really nice. This is what can happen if we don't have an Up the Beanstalk. Opponent hopeless. Nightmare. Sure. I don't think there's any point in bouncing anything, especially since we give our opponent a fish to do it. Aye. Found it. Gonna start scrying. Sure. I mean, all our opponent really needs to do is find a threat. All they need is a threat, and they should be able to close out this game. Well, the creature land kind of counts. Wow. The old 5-mana draw one. An opponent who knows a little bit about doing a lot to draw a single card. Yeah. I mean, Tolarian Terror having Ward is nice, but Ward 2, it's not a Belgavoth. Let's say, all right, Swamp, just kidding, it's an island. Go. that was a bad mispronunciation. I'm turning into my mother. Oh my god. I don't know if you ever had, like, I grew up in a big family, right? Nine siblings all together, and my poor mother would. When everyone was going crazy and, you know, being kids, I think she'd go through like 4 names before you get to the right one. I feel like I'm doing that with my basic lands now, calling my island swamps. Found it, gets in, hits us to 9. Oh, and a bushwhack. I mean, we can get a land out of our deck, I guess. Yes, it is. This is the worst we have seen this deck run by about 1 million miles, not even close. Like, we had an interesting start too. We had 2 5/5s on like turn 3. Our opponent just had the right answers. The Liliana really helped there. They just had the right answers for him, and since then we have just done nothing. We have just done nothing. Found it. And we are making fun of this creature land. That might actually be the threat that goes the whole way. We are down to 4, and we draw yet another land. And, yeah, good enough. Discard? Orzhov Viper? Well, it is Obstinate Baylaw's time to shine. All I want to do is live the dream of my opponent casting a turn 1 discard spell and me putting a Baloth into play. If we can do that, nothing else actually really matters. Nothing else really matters, that's the win. I guess a negate could be alright as well, perhaps. I usually just cut Seeds. I don't know if that's correct. Seed of Hope whiffs a lot in this deck, because we just have a lot of spells, but when we whiff, it's kind of just +3 spells in the graveyard, which maybe that's not a whiff. It seems weird because we're spending a card, not getting a card back, which is not good in general, but our deck just wants spells in the graveyard so badly that 1 mana gain 2 life, put 3 spells in the graveyard to reduce the cost on Terror and Grab might actually still be good. Well, we'll play first, and we will mulligan first. All right, there's the Baloth. There's the Baloth. There's the Baloth. There's the Baloth. It might be happening. Do we want the land? We have 2. I think we go graveyard. We'll find another one with the cash grab probably. Opponent. We also like Up the Beanstalk. What even turn 1 discard could they have that lets us put this into play? Because Ruthless Negotiations. Oh, all right. Opponent not. I've never been so sad that our opponent's not making us discard. Well, play the land. Pass the turn. Bandit's Talent. That would do it. All right, Ruthless Negotiations. Let's mill first. And I think we take Up the Beanstalk. I think I'd rather, against discard, I'd rather have Up the Beanstalk and miss a land drop if we have to than have a land and not have Up the Beanstalk. So I'm for opponent. And, there it is. There's the Hopeless Nightmare. Hello, friend. Hello. Got him. Got him. Got him. Oh, and this town ain't big. This town ain't big enough. Could potentially pick up the Bailoff and let us put it back into play with another discard spell and draw a card with the Up the Beanstalk. Yeah, let's milk this Storm Chaser Sallet. Hello. Hello, discard. And a Nurturing Pixie. Gonna pick up the Hopeless Nightmare. Sure. Replays the Hopeless Nightmare. I mean, not as hopeless when you have an Obstinate Bailoff, that's for sure. Grows the Fairy, tap land, surveils. Wow, more Up the Beanstalks. Up the Beanstalk into a land would be really, really good. Otherwise, the question is, do we do nothing and leave up this town? I think we just gotta draw land, untapped, please. Seed of Innocence. Do we cast it now in case we hit a land? I don't think it matters. I think we just wait. The problem is if we cast it in whiff, then we might have to discard something we don't want to discard, and we would hit a land. This town ain't big enough. Probably is the right choice, and they can like bounce our Hopeless Nightmare or something. Although we don't really have anything that they want to bounce. This town ain't big enough is good in our deck because our stuff likes to be bounced. Exile the land. Bona hits us. Down to 18. Do we cast the Seed of Hope? I think we do. Please. Okay. Storm Chaser Sallet or a Eddie Money Crab. We will, I think, take the talent here. The talent's really cute with this town. Get and hit ya. Sleight of Hand. Do a little digging. I mean, I guess we're just not going to play more lands this game. We're going to take the negate past the turn. I don't know about taking the Tolarian Terror. That is a odd choice. I mean, I guess they're taking it so we can't play it, which makes a lot of sense. But our opponent is not really built to play it on the cheap. Oh, so opponent. Oh, check this out. Check this out. Opponent sacks everything. Plays her Viper. This is so good. I was telling you how much I love this town in this deck. All right, so opponent plays a Viper, puts a trigger on the stack. In response, we will bounce the Viper. We will bounce the Bailoff. Pick him up. And... oh, wait. Oh, it fizzles a Viper. Okay. I mean, that's still fine. I was thinking we were going to put the Bailoff back into play for free. But because we bounced it before the trigger happened, so I guess we actually... maybe there was no way to actually make that work. Because if we wait till after the trigger happened, we wouldn't have the Bailoff in hand to discard. I mean, we're still in wonderful shape here. Opponent, do we want to do anything? Let's just do a little cachet grabbing here. Cachet us a crab grab. Just a little crab grab. Hilariously, we're going to pitch the Up the Beanstalk. I don't even think we need more card draw. It hurts my soul to say those words, but I think it's true. Hit you to 7, pass the turn. Lethal potentially on board. If our opponent just plays a Viper, negating what? Costs 2 mana to save the information that we have 2 Bailoffs in hand? I don't even think it's worth it. We'll just wait. Flash in the crab, draw 2 cards, and then all we need is any spell to trigger prowess to have lethal. Ooh. Oh, wait. How bad is this? All right, that's actually kind of bad. So let's flash in this crab to draw. Ugh, we draw another crab. Because the problem is they can exile the crab from the graveyard. So what are they going to exile? So I think because, this is hilarious, because we cast that crab, I think they probably exiled Tolarian Terror, because they're going to think, oh, there's way more terrors left in the deck. But we drew another crab. So our counterintuitive play of flashing our creature into the Wrath, I think wins us this game. Because now, yeah, they're going to exile the terrors. Now we just run out the crab, we draw 2 more cards, so we don't literally have lethal this turn. But, wow, opponent skips it up. That was ridiculous. This deck is so sweet. I absolutely love this deck. I will say, best thing about Duskmourn Standard so far is we've had some sweet budget decks. No Up the Beanstalk, no green mana. I do like the negates though. Well, land, and let's get down the Storm Chasers down. Let's see if we can be the aggro. We didn't want cards in our hand anyway. Well, let's get rid of the Seed of Innocence. Can't cast it either way. into the Floodmaw. I mean, eventually we do want some green mana. Well, at least we can like counter a Liliana or something. Otherwise, that would be annoying. Ruthless Negotiations. Yeah, I don't really want to spend a negate on that. We'll just discard the into the Floodmaw. And tap land. All right, land deck. Can we draw land? It's an island, but that's fine. We can sleight of hand, do a little digging. Well, we're gonna need green mana for either of these, but let's play the cash grab. Get in, hit ya. Down to 17. About it, land, and Bandit's Talent definitely good enough to counter, especially if we had a Baloth in hand. It might be different, but with no Baloth, worthy of a negate. About it, passing. Okay. Oh, green mana. We need our green mana. We will pass and leave up our negate. Really? Really? Okay, that's actually wonderful for us. If I could turn that Stormchaser's Talent into... Oh, now we gotta counter this. That's a bummer. If I could turn that into 2 map tokens, I would have done that on my own if I had the option. And this way we get a card out of our opponent's hand. Although the downside is, now I kind of feel like we're priced into countering this Tithing Blade, because we want to crack the maps to find our lands. I don't know, maybe this was a genius next level play by our opponent to get us to spend our negate. If it was, then well played, opponent. Oh, we draw the green mana anyway. So the map's a little less than bar, though we would prefer untapped. Can we just draw a forest? How about just a forest? All right, well, our opponent spent, if you're counting, 3 premium removal spells to deal with Stormchaser's Talent. Stormchaser, a single 1-drop enchantment. They spent a Get Lost on the enchantment, and then they cast a Tithing Blade that we countered, and then they had to cast a Sheoldred's Edict to get rid of the 1/1 token. Well, play the land up the beanstalk. Draw a card. Opponent's gonna sack to do some scrying. Yeah, I mean, if you can get a 3-for-1 out of Stormchaser's Talent for 1 mana, that's probably a good sign. That's a good sign for how the game's going. Opponent's gonna do a little scrying here with the Hopeless Nightmare. What if they replaced all scrying with Surveilling? That would probably just be too busted, right? Surveilling is sweet, though. Ooh, Bandit's Talent. See, now we don't have a negate for that. The good news is, there is another way to play around Bandit's Talent, which is not to run out of cards. And Up the Beanstalk, usually pretty decent at that. We can take the damage. We're at 18. We can take the damage for now. We just don't want our opponent to get it fully leveled up and start drawing cards. This town ain't big enough. It's kind of sweet. We can probably do some shenanigan with that opponent. Hits us for 2. Well, into the Floodmaw can also bounce it if we need to. So how do we want to do this? Let's crack the map first. We would actually just like to hit a land. Tolarian Terror. Well, we will keep that. Go to combat. Hit you with the crab down to 10. 2 more attacks. 2 more attacks is all it takes. If our opponent goes to level up the Bandit's Talent, we are going to blow them out. Opponent meals a duress. And they're going for it. All right, Bandit's Talent. Opponent cannot resist. Well, this town, it just ain't big enough for a Eddie Money Crab and a Bandit's Talent. So bounce the crab, bounce the talent, replay the crab, draw another card with the Up the Beanstalk, and you can see, oh, another terror too. You can see the synergies. An opponent scoops it up, cannot beat it. You can see the synergies, and that was a really impressive win against discard. Maybe this deck's just busted. We beat aggro, we beat discard, we beat mid-range. Do we break it? Do we break it? We might have broke it. This hand, I kind of like it. We got the Up the Beanstalk. We have a crab and a Stormchaser's Talent and a cash grab. This is actually kind of exactly what we want. Opponent Crawling Chorus. Well, play the land, play the Up the Beanstalk, draw a card. Crawling Chorus number 2. So Toxic, eh? I haven't played against Toxic in a minute. I don't know if this is good or bad for us. Let's play the Talent. So we have a blocker. Actually kind of a cute blocker because we can cash grab at instant speed to prowess pump the Otter and kill, well, I guess like half of a Crawling Chorus because they're going to get the token. But still, better than 0%. Yeah, we will block and... haha! Surprise cash grab. Cash grab's like, it's the most 2024 Magic card that you could possibly design. Opponent. Gonna tap and Experimental Augury. I mean, they get to proliferate us, but it doesn't actually change us killing their creature, and we get a, well, I guess a Tolarian Terror. We're getting close. We're getting close. Our Our crabs are still a little bit expensive, but we got another cash grab. So if we sleight of hand... Yeah, I mean, this is fine. We're actually maybe in pretty good shape. Grab the untap land. So we can just start Eddie Money crabbing here to tap down the dorks. Down 18. Only one up the beanstalk. Imagine if we had two. We don't level up the Storm Chaser's talent that often, but usually when we level it up, it ends up winning us the game. Like, even just getting the spell back from the graveyard to, like, bounce a blocker, attack one more time. Really, 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 really big. Crab to tap down your dorks. We would prefer not to take more poison. Funny that Toxic, well, another experimental augury. Toxic never really made it, did it? It sees play, and I guess they made the arena precon deck for it or whatever, but have we ever really had Toxic the best deck in the format or a top tier deck? I guess maybe right after release, there might have been a time where it was not the best deck in the format, but maybe top tier. I mean, I think that's true of, ooh, Mockingbird. I think that's true of Poison back when it originally came. Okay, up the beanstalk number 2. I don't even care if we're going to win. We're just going to draw cards. We're just going to draw some cards. Up the beanstalk, draw a card. And a land that we can't play yet. Well, go to combat. Oh, this is going to get good about it. Passing. So we can crab to tap down 2 of the blockers, draw 2 cards, then Tolarian Terror, draw 2. Oh my, this is gonna be, ooh. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, draw a card, sure. I mean, unfortunately for our opponent, it does not say target creature cannot be tapped down by an Eddie Mert crab this turn. Wow, that's a third up the beanstalk. If it said that, our opponent might be in business, but it does not. So we'll tap the 2 we can't block. If you would like to attack into our otter opponent, we will block. Oh, we're going to draw a serious amount of cards. There's actually might be a question as to, is it risky to play the third up the bean? Wow, and the this town. Is it risky to play the third up the beanstalk because we might mill ourselves out? We're going to cash grab, get the last spell in the graveyard, do 8 little... I mean, I imagine we're going to close out this game fast enough that it won't matter. Grab the island. We could try to win here. I don't think we're going to, but we could try to bounce the Crawling Chorus, pick up the Storm Chaser's talent, let us attack for lethal. If our opponent has interaction or a counter or protection spell, though, then we kind of just waste we're in, like, such a great position that I don't think we need to try to win this turn. If we're, like, at risk of dying, then I think we probably go for it. But there's a lot of ways this just doesn't work, like a removal spell, a counter spell, a protection spell. All right, opponent has a Serum Snare. Can bounce the token. Oh, they want to proliferate, I see. So going for lethal would not have worked anyway. I mean, this way, we get to leave up protection. We are at 5 poison. We get to leave up to this town. We get to play the Tolarian Terror, draw a bunch of cards. Bushwhack is actually, ooh, wow, Bushwhack into the Floodmaw. Those are good draws. Bushwhack to kill a Might token. Doesn't seem like great value, but at this point, just getting a body off the battlefield's good. And then, yeah, I think we just pass here. We could play another Terror. I think it's better to leave up to this town, though. Just on the off chance that something goes horribly wrong. We're in such a good position, we just don't want to get janked out by something. That would be kind of sad. Opponent. All right, gonna give it Toxic, gonna give it Flying. Yeah, I think that's fine. 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we just try to bounce. If we go up to 8, and then they have double Proliferate in hand, we could die. Yeah, let's just bounce this Mighty Might. And all right, bring the ending, but that's fine. That means even if they have Proliferate, they can't kill us. They can put us to 9. Our opponent, I will say, all right, and that should do it. And opponent scoops it up. They made it close. Our opponent actually made that closer than I was hoping they would make it. As far as sideboarding, I guess the Filigree Silexes seem fine. The only downside of Filigree Silex is it's not a spell, so it doesn't particularly synergize with the rest of our deck. But I think there's enough upside against an aggro deck like this that it's worth going down a couple of spells to have better removal. All right, Kitsune. Well, this hand looks almost exactly like we want our hands to look. I guess we could use a little bit more graveyard filling to get some spells to get the terror cost down, but bounce, terror, up the beanstalk, and then as a bonus, a 3 steps ahead. Ooh, Venerated Rot Priest. Okay. I mean, that is a scary card. Although it's funny, Rot Priest is much less scary. I guess we were talking about Toxic, right? The time that Toxic was at the best is when they had March of Swirling Mist. Is that the blue March? But the phase out spell that could turn Rot Priest into like a combo. Wow, this is actually kind of funny. We're going to into the Flood Maw of this Venerated Rot Priest. Our opponent, I wasn't paying attention. They played it off Mirrex last turn, so they don't actually have real green mana, so they can't even actually replay it. Yeah, opponent passes. Well, we will play a land, and quicker than ever get down and up the beam. Oh, okay. Experimental Augury is fine. I thought it was a counter spell. That would have been sad. They're going to Augury, go down for a land, proliferate us, but we get to get down, the up the beanstalk, draw a card. We might have to cast this 3 steps ahead just to filter. Right? Opponent found their green mana. Rot Priest returns, and a Shrelv. Ooh, Filigree Silex. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. Let's play the untap land. Pass the turn. Always a weird scenario, right? We can play the Surveil land to get a tap land out of our hand, and we're not spending the mana this turn, but then we make another tap land in the Botanical Sanctum, so now we have a tap land for... Ooh. See, these are where, when March of Swirling Mist was still in the format, this is where you would just be worried that you die, that they just, like, march, phase out all their stuff, trigger Rot Priest a million times. That was a actual real concern. We're still actually kind of taking a lot of poison here. We're taking a lot of poison. Opponent's going to get us up to, what, 6? But then this Filigree Silex, I think, just ruins our opponent's day. The Filigree Silex so good here. Take it up. Unless they have an answer, a 1-mana colorless answer. Well, play the Hedge Maze. Well, definitely milling that land. We are on expensive mode Tolarian Tears, that's for sure. Let's just do this right now. So our opponent doesn't untap and use some sort of indestructibility spell. Filigree Silex, probably better known as Plague Wind. Opponent's board dealt with. The downside of playing another Skrelv. I mean, I guess if we counter this, we can just cast a 5-mana Tolarian Terror, which is not exciting, but it is a legal play. Tolarian Terror for 5 mana, draw a card. Into an... Oh, this has been a weird draw, but it's working. Usually you don't want to be casting our crabs for 5 mana, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. Opponent pass. There we go. That's what we were missing. The cash grab. That should definitely get the cost of these crabs down. And find us another up the beanstalk. Oh, okay. We're in chocolate land now. Opponent down to 13. Up the beanstalk, draw a card, and Tolarian Terror, draw 2 cards. And I imagine a concession might be around the corner. We found it into the Flood Maw, which is not bad. Yeah, I don't think they can. They do have the Mirrex, but I don't think they can kill us if we tap out here. Draw a card, draw a card. Well, we have a Wall of Terrors. Terrortron assembled. Thanks to the power of Up the Beanstalk. Lethal has been presented. Can you stop it? Opponent taps and draws. Scoops it up, and 3 tears. Apparently good enough. Budget magic time. We are playing some Simic Spellslinger, some Simic crabs in Duskmourn Standard. The opponent Gruul. Well, we found her up the beanstalk. That's good. Assuming we're still alive in a couple of turns, which again, oh, not Gruul. What is our opponent playing? Teamer? What is a Teamer deck in this standard format? Oh, Stormcatch Mentor, okay. Oh, so some sort of like Otter Spellslinger deck? Interesting. Otters was a tribe that I thought during Bloomburrow spoiler season, like, maybe it can be good. It turns out, so far we haven't really seen Otters take off. Opponent. They've kind of been... Alright, Emperor Challenger. They've kind of been dominated by mice as far as aggro Bloomburrow decks. Ren's Resolve. Wow, we might just be instantly dead here. Ren's Resolve to draw some cards. We drop to 14. We draw nothing. Well, Seed of Hope. Get a Eddie Merc Crab that's still a bit expensive. Sleight of Hand. Get a cash grab, I guess. Play the land and bushwhack for another land. I mean, next turn, if we're alive, we can start crabbing. We have got enough spells in the graveyard, but are we alive next turn? I am not convinced we are. Opponent Ranzru's out for 1 mana. And another monstrous rage. Yeah, you got us. That was brutal. Sideboarding-wise, old friend Filigree Silex, I think, coming back in. We have not sideboarded heavily with this deck. Usually it's like, go down a couple seeds, bring in a couple of some things, but it's not a deck that I think it's necessary to sideboard super heavily with. If we were 1 turn faster, I think we were fine that game. Like, if we could have gotten to the Eddie Mark crabs, I think we could have just tapped our problems away. We didn't get there, but gonna be a 1-land 1 keeper, although that's a little deceptive because we have Analyze the Pollen, which it's essentially just a land that costs 1 mana, so it's actually a 2-land 1 keep. No Up the Beanstalk, which does kind of put a cap on how explosive it can possibly be, but it is a good hand. As good as a non-Beanstalk hand can be, at least. Well, Analyze the Pollen. Ouch. Down to 19. Grab a island. I like the Filigree Silex. Getting that down early should be helpful against our opponent's deck. Well, let's play the fast land, and let's just Filigree for you, Filigree for me. Pass the turn. Question is, how much do we want to take it up? We definitely take it up once. Not super worried about them having a bunch of zeros. Whether or not we go further than that is another question. Well, let's play the Storm Chaser's talent. Who's the Otter deck now, opponent? Who's the Otter deck now? Just when you thought you were going to Otter us. Opponent. Wow, does nothing. Okay, no 1s, no 2s. Plays a Mountain. Man, their deck looked so aggressive last game, and now it looks much less aggressive. I think we leave the Silex on 1 for now. Cash Grab is a wonderful draw. Up the Beanstalk, a wonderful card to have on the top of our deck. Yeah, I mean, they have haste creatures, but I think it's fine to get in for 1. The question is, do we cash grab? We cash grab, we know we're taking... Oh. All right, now I'm scared. We're going to bounce this Valley Floodcaller. That's why our opponent's doing nothing. They're a Valley Floodcaller deck. Okay. Valley Floodcaller has not taken off, but boy, that is a scary card. The potential of that card is incredibly high. Well, now we're going up to 3, I think, with this Filigree Silex. That is our plan, at least. They might get a turn. I don't know if they're really a combo deck, though. Our opponent might be playing the Stormcaller kind of fairly. Just like, I'm going to buff my dorks or whatever. It kind of looks like that's what they're doing. There are ways that you can potentially try to just go infinite with it, like a Jeskai Ascendancy. Our opponent's just going to run out the Floodcaller main phase. Well, we will... Playing Up the Beanstalk, trigger a little bit of prowess. So whenever opponent gets a non-creature spell, they pump and untap their team. Well, Into the Floodmaw is actually a pretty good draw. We can Into the Floodmaw, bounce the Floodcaller, and then when they replay it, we can get it with the Silex. We'll have enough counters. We can also just attack. If our opponent would like to trade, or chump, I guess. Would you like to chump with your combo engine? Aw, opponent says no. All right, down to 16. Like a single... Oh, okay. Why in the world are you casting a Monstrous Rage during our turn? That is... Huh? That's so... I mean, you get a Monstrous roll, but the pumping wears off. Okay, that is a strange choice, but I don't know what our opponent's plan exactly was there. Maybe they just really wanted the roll? I do not understand. Okay, so opponent, Valley Floodcaller, makes its return. The bad news for our opponent is Filigree Silex has very much impressed me. If you're playing like a white deck or a black deck, you probably don't need it because you have Malicious Eclipse and Temporary Lockdown and all these other ways to deal with a bunch of cheap early game things. But Filigree Silex, if you're playing Simic or like a blue deck or whatever, it actually does a close enough approximation. We're gonna take the Terror. I don't think we need another Silex. It actually does a close enough approximation of those cards that I think it's, I don't know, at least in this deck it has felt really good out of the sideboard. We've brought it in quite often and it's actually been impactful pretty much every time we brought it in. Yeah, let's just do this now. Crack the Silex, get rid of this Floodcaller. I don't know, maybe I'm overly scared of Floodcaller. I think from what we saw from our opponent's deck in game 1, Floodcaller, okay, instant speed, Ren's Resolve, that's kind of cute. From what we saw from our opponent's deck in game 1, it looked like Floodcaller was a just a random otter that kind of works with the Spellslinger like prowess theme of the deck rather than a combo piece. But whenever it's one of those cards, it's like when your opponent drops an Ashnod's Altar in your commander game, and it's like, oh no, don't worry, I'm not gonna combo with it. I'm playing it fairly. Yeah, right. I mean, maybe you are playing it fairly, but I can't take your word on it. I still have to kill it or kill you, because even if you think you're playing it fairly, you might accidentally just win in combo with it. I feel like Valley Floodcaller is kind of the same way. Like, our opponent might be playing it fairly, but even played fairly, it is a very scary card. Now, let's Bushwhack for a land, and play an island, and up the Beanstalk. Number 2, and I think this gets us lethal, right? Enough prowessing, unless our opponent has 1 mana removal. They could Witchstalker. Oh, they actually have Witchstalker's Frenzy. Okay. Well, our opponent not giving up yet. The bad news for our opponent is we got multiple crabs in hand. We got a Terror and a crab, and 2 Beanstalks. Draw, land, and well, okay. We found the Botanical Sanctums. I was wondering, I was just thinking, man, we have only drawn 1 Botanical Sanctum this game. Magic gods were like, here you go. How about 3 more? Abonnet Island. And Stormcatch Mentor. And, alright, Pearl of Wisdom to draw some cards at a discount, sure. Well, they're not going to kill us either way, but this crab in hand is going to be very good here. If our opponent's plan is to like try to cast a bunch of spells and pump their team, it is going to all fall apart once this Eddie Merc crab comes down. So opponent gets a little ruckus on, finds a lightning strike. The only thing is we want to win this game. Opponent's gonna lightning strike. So if we just cast this, draw 2 cards, tap down 2 things, that should, oh, this town ain't big enough. Okay, so we definitely should have it now. So Eddie Merc Crab, tap and tap. So I mean, our opponent can hit us what, down to 16, down to 12. They actually were gonna be, wow, close to killing us. 10, 11, 13, 14. If we had nothing and they had another lightning strike in hand, they might actually got us there. That was actually close. Run it back. Can we get the perfect 5-0 sweep? 5-0 with the budget deck. 5 in a row. We're going to keep this. We are really trusting Filgrease Ilex to be as good as we hope. The hand is missing ways to fill the graveyard. This town ain't big enough. That might be able to do things with Filgrease Ilex. Well, let's Bushwhack for land, get a spell in the graveyard. We need to get spells in the graveyard to get down a Terror crab as soon as possible. Opponent. All right, looking a little mono ready at the moment. Gonna do some plotting. Ugh. All right, that is a future problem. Let's get down the Filgrease Ilex. Yeah, opponent's off to a scarier start than last game on the play. There is the fast land, a little bit of blue mana, and the Slick Shot Show Off coming off of its plot. I don't think we're literally dead. They'd have to have a lot of pump spells for us to actually be dead here, but those are 2 prowess creatures. We are tapped out. And the Floodcaller too. Okay, well, that is better than us being dead, but it is scary for the future. We might have to do, okay, so we can do a cool trick with the Filgrease Ilex, and this town ain't big enough. This town ain't big enough, target this Ilex and the Floodcaller, and then with it on the stack, we can sack the Filgrease Ilex. So essentially, we get the discount for targeting our own thing, but also get to activate this Ilex and kill the Swift Spear. So then our opponent would have, what, Floodcaller in hand? Yeah, I think we gotta do it. All right, target. Keep priority, sack the Ilex, kill the Swift Spear. Our opponent's still going to have the Floodcaller in hand, and they still got a Slick Shot Show Off on the battlefield, and we still are not getting a lot of traction. I don't know, I'm not feeling great about this one. The only thing that has me feeling a little bit okay is that our opponent also has not cast many spells. We're 2 kind of decks that care about casting spells, and our opponent has mostly cast a whole bunch of creatures, no spells. We have also not been able to fill our graveyard with spells. We did get to this town, but we have a lot of 5 mana crabs in hand at the moment. Once we get to 5 mana, though, look out. Ooh, Pearl of Wisdom. Okay, that's okay. Our opponent's spending 3 mana to draw cards. Ooh, Seeds of Hope might be huge. Okay, Millisym spells. Whiff, 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 whiff. Yes, the best whiff ever. Okay, so we gained some life. Most importantly, our crabs are online. Seed of Innocence was a great, or Seed of Hope was a great draw. Seed of Innocence, that's like an old Mirage enchantment, right? Opponent, Stormcatch Mentor. Well, let's see if the crabs can make it. We have another this town too, so we can like Eddie Merc crab multiple turns in a row if we need to. Keep us alive. Tap 'em, tap 'em. Crabs versus otters versus birds. Fury Blue, ooh. Well, let's play the land. Yeah, let's just Tolarian Terror. I'd rather get down the Terror and use that to fight off of just because of the ward. Like, I don't think our opponent... We saw Witchstalker's Frenzy, right? They can't Witchstalker's Frenzy right now. So hopefully our opponent can't remove it anyway, but just in case, the ward makes it a little more annoying. All right, down to 15. Well, let's do a little bushwhacking. Terror fight the... So I have a Flood Caller. So I think the reason to fight this is... The Mentor is just going to give the static discount on all the spells, which could do like some scary go wide thing with the Storm Chaser they can flash in. Slick Shot Show Off can go super tall and deal a ton of damage, but if our opponent goes all in on the Slick Shot, we can just bounce it with this town. So I'm more worried about our opponent kind of like swarming around our blockers with the Valley Stormcaller and getting past us that way than just going all in on this Slick Shot. The Slick Shot I don't think can beat us here. Also, I'm not convinced our opponent really has spells. We've seen a lot of like Slick Shots attacking for one this game because our opponent has just not had the spells to back it up. Wow, attacks with both? All right, I mean, we're going to block the Flood Caller. Oh, is this a Witchstalker's Frenzy? Okay, opponent's gonna Frenzy it, trigger their stuff, pay the ward. The question is, do we bounce the Terror to save it, or do we bounce the Eddie Merc Crab so we can get it back later? I think we bounce the Terror, and we're actually gonna take damage from the Slick Shot and just bounce the Flood Caller, because our opponent can't, I don't think, recast it. All right. Oh. Okay, so we take 6 plus 3. Oh, wow, we're down to 6. Okay. Well, Up the Beanstalk is not the worst draw. This is actually a very close game. We could just be dead. Sleight of Hand, you find a bounce spell, find a Cash Grab, I guess. Cash Grab can't find a bounce spell. Well, it comes down to this. Someone's going to die here. We're going to take the land in case we draw something off of this. Ooh, 3 steps ahead. Our opponent can kill us this turn with a Pump Spell, a Lightning Strike. If they don't kill us this turn, we can potentially kill them next turn with our crabs. This is the turn of the game. This is the turn of the game. Can we go on the 5-0 sweep? Opponent thinking. Slick Shot Show Off out. Valley Flood Tamer in hand. Thinking. Land. Okay, that's fine. Plays the Flood Caller. Opponent's last card is... Blazing Crescendo. Oh, wow. Well, this deck's super good, but it looks like gonna have to sell for the 4-1. So close. 1 card short. So what do we learn this week about Simic Crab Spellslinger? And overall, I've played 10 matches with the deck. We've won 8 of them, so an 80% match win percentage. And I gotta say, I think this deck is actually really good, or at least pretty good. Like, maybe not just good for a budget deck, but good for a deck overall. The deck played incredibly well. It really punched up as far as just how strong it played, because you see this kind of weird pile of spells and Up the Beanstalk and a bunch of weird lower rarity cards and bushwhacks, but when you put them all together, the deck just plays really, really powerfully. Thanks to cards like Seed of Hope and Cash Grab, it's pretty easy to get enough spells in our graveyard to be casting our crabs and our terrors like on turn 3, on turn 4, and then once we add Up the Beanstalk into the mix, the deck almost plays like this weird combo deck where we generate so much card advantage and build this huge board out of nowhere. As far as individual cards, gotta give a shout out to This Town Ain't Big Enough. That's a card when I first saw it, I was like, do I even want this in the deck? But the more I played with it, the stronger that card felt, and now it's like my favorite card in the deck just because there's so many cool tricks for it. The other card I gotta mention is Seed of Hope. So Seed of Hope, if you saw during sideboarding, it's a card that I took out quite a bit. I think it's maybe the easiest card to cut during sideboarding. Be warned, you can't really cut the bushwhacks and analyzes because you need those, they're counting as lands, right? If we cut those, we're not gonna have enough lands for the deck to function. So Seed of Hope is the easiest thing to cut, and Seed of Hope, it does whiff quite a bit in this deck. We just don't don't have that many permanents, so we're only milling 2. So a lot of times we mill 2 and just hit 2 non-permanents and don't actually draw a card with it. The thing is, I realized eventually that that's actually kind of fine. Like, if we cast this and just mill 2 instants and sorceries, we're essentially getting a 3-mana discount on our Eddie Merc Crab and under Trilarian Terror. So even if we whiff, it's still kind of doing its job in a weird way by just getting a ton of spells in the graveyard. So I think overall, Simic Spellslinger Crabs, the deck's super fun. It's cheap, and it's super competitive, so if you're looking for another good budget deck for Duskmourn, and so far Duskmourn, I will say, has been a really sweet format for budget decks. We've had some really fun, really competitive budget decks, but this is another good one if you like slinging spells, and you like combo decks, and you like up the beanstalk, and building huge boards out of nowhere, and doing tricky things at instant speed. This just might be the Duskmourn Standard budget deck for you. So anyway, everyone, that's Simic Spellslinger Crabs. That's been our budget magic for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon.